Alright, so we are in the installation, and the first thing that I noticed is that there's so many pieces all over the place, and I also think that I just feel like everything looks like a battle, but I also feel getting the sense of that everything's like united, and everything's like it all comes into one world, and I just can't stop having that feeling because I see all the carpets and it's all on top of one another. And you're allowed to go in here and you're allowed to sit and interact with it, so it's like that sense of unity never goes away.
Okay, so Angel, you're noticing that in here there's definitely some kind of battle that's happening. In fact, we have like toy soldiers, some missiles. The ground seems to be set up for a battle, but you feel also this sense of being united. What more can we find?
Oh, I felt that the material being used to make up the floor was pretty unique because it's not just wood, it's not just one thing, it's different textures, and it shows that that even though it's supposed to represent like a battle, in my view, it's more of like there's bits of it that are different because in other places a battle may seem that it's physically abusing people, but in others it could just be that they don't have food, it's different battles people face all the time.
What do you see that makes you say that it could be a different battle aside from just
Colors?
this toy, the colors?
Yeah, I felt that the colors, sometimes we assume that dull colors mean people are sad, we assume that bright color, the person's bright, but they're just appearances, so I felt that like the soldiers were just the visual of like a battle, but there's more to it. It's an individual battle itself.
Okay, so like something about the colors is making you think that it's not just a battle about the soldiers, but it's about something about some kind of internal battle as well. And you're noticing these bright colors. What more do we see in the exhibition that you talked about?
I also see like there's a record player, and the music that you can turn on, it must be like each song could be like a different world, and it also goes with the carpets and the patterns on the carpets. It looks like it's displaying land and different types of land and different types of communities and different types of worlds coming together. So the music, like every song that you could play is like a different world, and it could signify like also the unity again of the installation. And even though there's a battle going on, it's everything going like clashing together, and you still get that sense of unity.
And I think you guys are really used to like ascribing a lot of meaning behind something, but maybe we can drop, we don't have to do that as much. We can just talk about what we're noticing and be very natural about it. And if you do find a lot of meaning, you can add it. So you're noticing the record player, thinking about like different worlds. Indeed, Lisi Raskin, she was born in 1975, and she grew up during the Cold War era, so her whole childhood was kind of overshadowed by the Cold War. And she was really interested in the fact that a real war was happening in the world, or not a real, I mean a war was happening, but at the same time that in pop culture, they seem to kind of make light of it. You know, so there's this very serious thing about the war, but then there's this lightness. And so she talks about, you know, we have a record player here, and she talks about vividly remembering the music video from Nina's 99 Left Balloons, the movies Red Dawn, Chernobyl. She listened to Sting's song Russians from 1985, which repeated the phrase, "I hope the Russians love their children too." Cyberpunk was full of visions of a post-atomic future. So like, even in pop culture, you could see on the news something very serious. But at the same time, in culture and music and movies, there's some lighthearted quality to it too.
Yeah, I was also getting that feeling, and also like a sense of overwhelming, because there's so much going on at the same time, and it's kind of like a small area, and you're trying to fit everything together, and it's just like no one's winning at the time. And also from the background, from the different types of songs, and even though there's like a lot of sadness going on around, you can also like get this this sense of happiness from it, and actually more feeling from that and it's like important because you can see like this is like an installation, and it could be really simple, but at the same time it could be very overwhelming, and that could be like the Cold War and the music that people made about it and how they found a deeper meaning in the whole battle, besides how gory it was and besides how dangerous it was at the time.
I felt that when you mentioned that it was her childhood, I felt that you could view that here because the way it's formed on the top, I felt like when I was little, at least I would make forts like and stuff out of blankets, and then she didn't just create a box for this exhibit thing. She made it seem like she wanted to be a part of it as well. So I think, and also that we get to interact and like the blocks and stuff, and the toys, it's something as a child we tend to play around with and don't see importance, and then it must have affected her, and then she wanted to apply that in her art.
Yeah, and she talks a lot about, she in all of her art will build, is really famous for building these temporary structures. And all of her art kind of has to do with war. What she'll do is she'll make a work of art about some kind of period of conflict or site of conflict in the world, and she'll make a temporary structure so that you can kind of play and maybe have a different relationship to what really happened. So she often makes these almost like fort-like environments. And she talks about how one of the motivations for her was, as an artist, was that she, with her Aunt Robin when she was little, her Aunt Robin, so I'll read you a little bit from this book on her. She said, "I was incredibly influenced by a type of play initiated by my Aunt Robin. Basically, she would take my brother and me on adventures. Often these adventures would involve trespassing. For example, on Christmas, we would explore World War II training bunkers at Jonathan Dickinson State Park because most of the security guards were at home with their families. We would spend the car ride out to wherever we were going, constructing the narrative of why we were going there. For example, we might think of to investigate an alien landing site, for example, and concocting our own cover story. So even if it's in its earliest incarnation, my desire to explore landscapes and invent scenarios grew out of a twofold family activity that involved trespassing into dangerous or loaded territories and making up stories."
I think that's also really important because without the sense of adventure and the sense of like a thrill, she wouldn't have been able to actually see a different point of view in war and how she can actually make this like different world and make you feel something different than just like it's all serious and it's all important. Like, you can just go in and make your own adventure. You don't have to be like narrowed down to just one simple idea, which is like battle and war and fighting.
I felt that since it was something that she did with her aunt, and she was kind of a kid, that it showed that she was able to get past it, I guess, because sometimes we tend to view the problem as a serious matter, the end of the thing, like it's the end of the world, but even though it was important, she tried to enjoy herself and enjoy every bit of her time with her aunt, and she got to feel something, so she wanted us to feel something as well.
Well, and I think artists do that. I mean, because making art about something that's serious, that's happening in the world, is very different than being a political activist or being a politician or a scientist or a doctor. It's kind of entering it from a different way.